Hello again, this is Kurgan here, back with another BF3 weapon review. Now today we'll be looking at a light machine gun. I have not reviewed one of these yet, so I figured it was time for a change. It's going to be the M60 and the changes that it received from the Armored Kill weapon patch that landed on September 4th. Now, the M60 didn't receive any changes to it specifically from the patch. It's been completely unchanged. The only thing that affected it was the change to the suppressor, so nothing really huge. This weapon's the same as it's been for a little while. So let's jump into the meat of it and talk about the M60's weapon characteristics and when to use this weapon. And to do that, we're going to need to get a better understanding of light machine guns in general, since I have not covered these weapons before. Now, the one thing about light machine guns that really stands out is they have a large penalty to spread compared with other weapons, like the L85 and the L86. They're very similar, but the spread difference is just massive. So we're going to compare the M60 with the G3, since they both use 7.62 rounds, and they both do 34 damage a round. They're very similar, so it's a good baseline to look at. Now, the G3 has an ADS, or aim down sight spread, of only 0.1. Now, it doesn't matter if you're standing, crouching, or prone. This weapon is always 0.1. Whereas the M60 has a spread of 0.5 standing, which is 500% greater. Just such a large difference. It's 0.4 while crouching and 0.2 while prone. So even while prone, the M60 is not as accurate or has a worse spread pattern than the G3 does. So it's something you really have to keep in mind. These are weapons that you really want to be crouching or prone with, because you're going to gain back some of that spread loss that they have. Now, most other weapons in BF3, they don't have a difference between crouching, prone, or standing. Their ADS is the same. Unless you're moving, then some of them do. So that's kind of a unique thing to the LMGs. Another thing to remember is that LMGs are the only non-sniper rifles that also have their vertical recoil affected by foregrips. Most LMGs will benefit a good amount from a foregrip on vertical recoil, except for the small LMGs. Those weapons usually aren't affected by this. So the M60 gains a pretty good reduction to vertical recoil while using a foregrip. It's an interesting choice, but the downside is that you gain more spread. And this is a problem that these weapons already have, is more spread. So it's really a difficult choice for me, and it's something that you'll have to play with and see if that is something that you enjoy, because it will make these guns more manageable, but it will make the shots a lot more random. If you do decide to use the foregrip, make sure that you go prone or crouch as much as possible. If you're standing, you gain a 0.1 to your spread, not something good to have. So if you go crouched or prone, it's only something like 0.06, so it's a good amount less. It'll make the weapon more accurate, and it's the stances that you're going to want to use if you want to be effective while using a foregrip. And the last thing that makes LMGs unique is the fact that the flash suppressor doesn't affect hipfire spread. With any other weapon, as far as I know, maybe not sniper rifles, your hipfire is reduced, your spread is increased, so it's less effective with the flash suppressor. But these weapons, you can run it, so you get that decreased recoil, but it will not affect your spread. And that sounds good, but that's only because these weapons are already so bad at hip firing, so be careful. Try not to hip fire them, because they're just not good at it. Go down the sights as much as you possibly can. Now, let's talk about the M60 specifically. Compared with the PKP and the M240B, which are the two other LMGs that deal 34 damage per bullet, the M60 is much more manageable in the recoil. It has the lowest vertical recoil of the bunch at only 0.6, and has by far the lowest side-to-side recoil of only 0.2. So it's just a much easier to control weapon than the other two. But the cost is rounds per minute. The other two weapons fire faster. The M60 only fires at 580 rounds a minute, which is plenty enough. It is one of the fastest time to kill weapons in the game. But you have to make sure that you land those bullets, which is going to depend on your stance. Like I said, crouching or prone is going to help you get that time to kill down, and actually to the numbers that it should be at, rather than if you were standing and hip firing, you won't be hitting your target and you won't be in that actual time to kill slot. Now, one thing that I see a lot of people asking is, should I use a flash suppressor or should I use extended mags? And unlike faster LMGs, like the M249, where I feel extended mags is almost a must, the M60 is such a slow firing weapon. It does hit hard, and I just don't always feel that extended mags are needed, which is actually a beneficial thing for this weapon, because it gives you some flexibility. with 580 rounds a minute, you don't necessarily chew through that ammo. You won't find yourself reloading. These weapons reload slow, so having an extended clip is nice, but it really all comes down to situations with the M60. For example, if you're going to play something like No Char TDM, I would highly suggest extended mags, simply because you don't have time to reload. It's such a small map that you really want to be doing that as little as possible, and it's close quarters, so you're just not going to have the room or the time to reload. So taking those extended mags will allow you to keep going rather than stopping and waiting the 7 or so seconds it takes to reload this weapon. Now, if you're going to play a larger map, then the flash suppressor for the accuracy is going to be better, because you're going to have time to take cover and you're going to have time to reload this weapon. So make sure to think about what type of scenario that you're in, because choosing one or the other is really important, and for most guns, for most LMGs, they're kind of stuck in what they need. But this weapon, since it's got the slow rate of fire, can use either or, and it's great with both of them. It's just that you have to pick the right one for the right situation. Now let's talk about when to use the M60. As with most light machine guns, it's recommended for scenarios where people can't move to avoid your bullets. Now this may seem obvious, but with these LMGs already having so much spread, being suppressed just makes it worse. So having a scenario where even if you are suppressed, the enemy is trapped between two cement walls really helps, because you'll have these bullets coming and they just don't have anywhere to run to avoid them. And if that situation isn't available, picking wise flanking paths to avoid suppression is super important. Try to engage targets that are concentrated on somebody else, because if they are shooting at somebody else, you're not being suppressed, and you can use your weapon to its fullest capability against them. Now, that's, an obvious point. Anybody should be doing that with any weapon. But with the M60 and the other light machine guns, since they already have so much spread, being suppressed just makes it all that much worse. So if a target is shooting at you, they're going to have that advantage on you, because their weapon won't be as affected by the suppression. They already have a much more accurate weapon. So you want to make sure to not be suppressed. And if you're having problems with that, grab squad cover. It'll help reduce those effects on you. Now, my overall thoughts on the M60 is it's one of my favorite LMGs. Not necessarily because it's an amazing gun, but you gotta have that nostalgia for it. The Arnold movies, Stallone using this weapon. It just makes me feel amazing using this. Stepping into a hallway and you're like, oh, get down. It just makes you feel like a movie star. And then the fact that it's so controllable and has those hard-hitting rounds. It's really a fun gun to use, and it's a really controllable light machine gun, and it hits really hard. So it's interesting, and I think it's a really good gun. It's a good bridge gap between the heavy LMGs, like its bigger brothers, the PKP and the M240B, and the more medium-sized LMGs, like the M249 and the LSAT. This is the weapon that is more controllable like those medium LMGs, but it has the longer reload, and it has the larger rounds and damaging bullets of its bigger brothers. So it's a great weapon that is it's a transitional weapon, If you like the medium LMGs but you want a little bit harder hitting weapon, this is the one to look to. So I'd highly suggest it for anybody who's thinking that maybe those other ones just aren't fitting them quite right and want to try something that hits a bit harder per round. That's going to be it for this review. So if you want to see some more weapon reviews, make sure to like it, subscribe, leave comments. I reviewed this weapon and my two previous weapons because people wanted to see these reviewed. So if you want to see something reviewed, leave it in the comments and I'll try and get to it as soon as I can. So as always, this is OneKurgan1, and thanks for watching.